Good afternoon. Today, the Department of Justice is announcing charges against two people who allegedly attempted to carry out a deadly plot that was directed by factions of the Iranian government to assassinate a foreign ambassador here in the United States. Mansour Arbabsiar, a naturalized United States citizen who holds an Iranian passport and was arrested last month in New York, is accused of working with members of an arm of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps to devise an international murder-for-hire scheme targeting the Saudi Arabian ambassador to the United States. According to the complaint filed today in the Southern District of New York, Arbabsiar is alleged to have orchestrated a $1.5 million assassination plot with Gholam Shukuri, an Iranian-based member of the Quds Force, and other Iranian co-conspirators. Now, the Quds Force is a unit of the Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. It is also suspected of sponsoring attacks against the coalition forces in Iraq and was designated by the Department of Treasury in 2007 for providing material support to the Taliban and other terrorist organizations. The complaint alleges that this conspiracy was conceived, was sponsored, and was directed from Iran and constitutes a flagrant violation of U.S. and international law, including a convention that explicitly protects diplomats from being harmed. In addition to holding these individual conspirators accountable for their alleged role in this plot, the United States is committed to holding Iran accountable for its actions. Arbabsiar and Shukuri are charged with conspiracy to murder a foreign official, conspiracy to use a weapon of mass destruction, and conspiracy to commit an act of international terrorism, among other charges. Arbabsiar has been in custody since September the 29th, 2011, while Shukuri, based in Iran, remains at large. Now, according to the complaint, earlier this spring, Arbabsiar met with a confidential informant from the Drug Enforcement Administration who was posing as an associate of a violent international drug trafficking cartel. The meeting, which took place in May and in Mexico, was the first of a series that would result in an international conspiracy by elements of the Iranian government to pay the informant $1.5 million to murder the ambassador on United States soil, according to documents that we filed today in court. According to the complaint, those discussions led Arbabsiar, with Shukuri's approval, to facilitate the wiring of approximately $100,000 into a bank account in the United States as a down payment for the attempted assassination. The complaint also states that in the days since the defendant's arrest, he has confessed to his participation in the alleged plot, as well as provided other valuable information about elements of the Iranian government's role in it. The disruption of this alleged plot marks a significant achievement by our law enforcement and intelligence agencies, as well as the close cooperation of our partners in the Mexican government. I want to commend the outstanding work of the agencies that were involved in this investigation, including the FBI and Director Mueller, who is here with us today, as well as the Drug Enforcement Administration and Michelle Lenhart. Their agents and their analysts worked closely with prosecutors here at the Department's National Security Division, as well as in the Southern District of New York, over these many months to monitor this alleged conspiracy, obtain valuable information, and bring one of the primary plotters to justice. I want to thank them for their remarkable work, and I'd like to turn it over to Director Mueller.
Well, good afternoon. This case illustrates that we live in a world where borders and boundaries are increasingly irrelevant. A world where individuals from one country sought to conspire with a drug trafficking cartel in another country to assassinate a foreign official on United States soil. And though it reads like the pages of a Hollywood script, the impact would have been very real, and many lives would have been lost. These individuals had no regard for their intended victim, no regard for innocent citizens who might have been hurt or killed in this attempted assassination. They had no regard for the rule of law. And with these charges, we bring the full weight of that law to bear on those responsible. And we send the clear message that any attempts on American soil will not be tolerated. This was not a typical case for any of us. Given the global ties we unraveled and the scope of the plot itself, but it represents the full range of threats we face, and it illustrates the need for continued collaboration between agencies, departments, collaboration between countries. And we have said it many times before, but it does bear repeating. It is only working side by side that we are able to stop plots like this before they can take hold. We will continue to work together to find and stop those who seek to do us harm, whether they attempt to strike overseas or here at home, whether it is a conspiracy to kill a foreign official on U.S. soil, a terrorist attack on United States citizens, or street crime in our communities. Now let me turn it over to Lisa Monaco.
Thank you very much, Director Mueller. I want to echo the remarks of the Attorney General and others here today in thanking those involved in this operation. This is a significant milestone and achievement in our national security efforts. As you have heard, the facts as alleged today in today's criminal complaint shed light on an assassination plot that was conceived and sponsored by elements of the Iranian government. Thanks to a coordinated law enforcement effort, we were able to penetrate and thwart the plot before it could result in harm to the ambassador or anyone else. I want to thank the men and the women of the National Security Division, in particular those from the division's counterterrorism section and other sections within the division, for their efforts in helping to shepherd this case and for their efforts in the extensive coordination that was required to arrive at today's result. This case, perhaps more than any in recent memory, involved an incredible amount of collaboration with partners over several months. Were it not for the hard work of the division and its many partners, we wouldn't be standing here today. I want to thank our partners in the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York for their extensive and hard work on this matter. I also want to acknowledge the work of the prosecutors in the Houston U.S. Attorney's Office, and of course the many investigators at the FBI, the DEA, and the New York Joint Terrorism Task Force. They deserve a special commendation for thwarting this plot and obtaining information on those behind it. Finally, I want to thank the intelligence community for its critical role in this matter. The National Security Division was designed to serve as the place where intelligence and law enforcement come together at the Justice Department. I am proud to say that we served that purpose here. This case demonstrates exactly how the division is supposed to work and should serve as a model for future cases. Thank you, and I'd like to introduce the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, Preet Bharara.
Thank you, Assistant Attorney General Monaco. As has been described, the complaint unsealed today reveals a well-funded and pernicious plot that had as its first priority the assassination of the Saudi ambassador to the United States. The details of that murder plot are chilling, to say the least, as the defendants allegedly had no care or concern about inflicting mass casualties on innocent Americans on American soil in furtherance of their assassination plan. For example, as set forth in the complaint, when the confidential source noted that there could be 100 or 150 people in a fictional restaurant where the requested bombing would take place, including possibly members of the United States Congress, the lead defendant, acting on behalf of a component of the government of Iran, said no problem and no big deal. And as we allege, the defendants showed that they were more than ready, willing, and able to carry out their plan by, among other things, causing $100,000 to be wired through a New York bank as a deadly down payment for their hired gun. And it didn't stop there. The Saudi ambassador's assassination was allegedly intended to be merely the opening act in a series of lethal attacks cooked up by the defendants and their cohorts in Iran. Like the speakers before me, I want to thank all the partners responsible for unraveling this plot before it ever even got off the ground. Our work, as has been said, is the product of a collaborative effort among intelligence and law enforcement agencies that share an unflagging commitment to keeping Americans safe, both at home and abroad, and protecting representatives of foreign governments while they are guests in our country. I want to commend Director Mueller and the FBI for its outstanding work on this unprecedented and very much ongoing investigation. Specifically also the Houston FBI office for its tremendous work, and also the New York Joint Terrorism Task Force, and our partner in so many cases, Janice Vodarchik, the assistant director in charge there in the New York office. I also want to thank the Houston office of the DEA for their important role in this investigation. And of course, the Attorney General and his staff, Assistant Attorney General Lisa Monaco, and our close colleagues at the National Security Division for their tremendous leadership and support. And finally, I just want to acknowledge the dedicated career prosecutors in my own office in the Southern District of New York, Glenn Kopp and Edward Kim, along with their supervisors, Michael Farbiarz and Jocelyn Strauber, Deputy U.S. Attorney Richard Zabel, and the Acting Chief of the Criminal Division, Jonathan Kolodner. None of the people that have been mentioned by me and others have gotten much sleep lately, and we're all safer because of it. Today's charges should make crystal clear that we will not let other countries use our soil as their battleground. Thank you.
Take any questions that you might have.
Mr. Attorney General?
When you say that you're gonna hold Iran accountable, what exactly do you mean by that?
We'll be working with our colleagues at the White House, at the State Department, at the Treasury Department, and they will be taking further action, which they will be making which they'll be making known in the over the next few hours, I expect.
Just to be clear, though, Mr. Attorney General, to what degree are you saying that the Iranian government was complicit? Did they know about this at the outset? Did they direct it? Did they order it? What exactly are you saying?
Well, the organization that I reference in my remarks is a component of the Iranian government. It was as we have alleged in the complaint, say that this was directed and approved by elements of the Iranian government, and specifically senior members of the Quds Force, which is a part of the Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and the Iranian military. High-up officials in those agencies, which is an integral part of the Iranian government, were responsible for this plot.
Does that suggest then that the upper reaches of the Iranian government knew about this and blessed this?
We are not making that charge at this point.
Can you talk a little bit more about these other attacks that were to follow, and what is the sort of understood motivation or purpose behind the overall plot as you see it?
We are restricting our comments today to that which we have charged in the complaint.
Why were the charges brought in New York, and were there any charges to be brought in D.C.?
As is the case when you have an international plot that touches a lot of different jurisdictions, cases can be brought in a lot of different jurisdictions, and one of the bases for jurisdiction to be in the Southern District of New York is, as I pointed out in my remarks, that there was a $100,000 payment, which was a down payment on the alleged assassination attempt, and that traveled through a bank in the Southern District of New York.
Mr. Attorney General, were there, besides the wiring of the money, what were the other overt acts? Did anybody obtain explosives?
Well, I want to let Preet go through that, but the answer to that one is no. But
the complaint alleges just a couple of overt acts. There's a discussion of conversations that took place, meetings that took place. The complaint does not allege that explosives were actually purchased. Remember, as the complaint lays out, the entire time that this operation was being investigated, the confidential source was operating under the guidance and monitorship of FBI and other law enforcement agents. So no explosives were actually ever placed anywhere, and no one was actually ever in any danger.
Can you address what role the Mexican government played in the investigation of this? I mean, since the subject apparently traveled back and forth there, could you tell us anything about how they were involved?
well, I can certainly say that as we've all commended the Mexican government for their cooperation with us in this, helping us uncover the plot, helping us ultimately unwind it. I don't want to go into too much detail as to what the nature of the cooperation was, but it was significant, and I don't think that without it we would have been able to accomplish what we have announced today.
Are there any other suspects at large in the United States? There's reference here to others who had conducted, or another who had conducted surveillance in Washington of the ambassador. Are there any folks you suspect who are part of this plot still in the United States that you're looking for?
We don't have any basis to believe that there are any other co-conspirators present here in the United States.
Mr. Mueller, two questions. First, did the Iranian man know the ambassador's favorite restaurant? It says it was discussed, or was that something that the confidential informant, came up with? And second, why is the other person, how is he still at large?
I'm not going to, I don't think it's appropriate to comment on the second question. In response to the first question, we should just be clear that as the complaint lays out, there was never actually any identified restaurant. I refer to it as a fictional restaurant, I think, in my remarks. It was the way in which, as is laid out in the complaint, the confidential source was providing information to the people who were paying him to engage in this assassination plot as to the details of it and the way in which he was going about setting up what was requested of him, after the payment of money was made.
Could you elaborate a little bit on what kind of an attack this was supposed to be? Was it to be a car bomb, or what sort of an attack?
Again, directing to the complaint, it's not a very long document. There's a discussion in the complaint about the way in which the assassination attempt would go off. And if memory serves, I think there's a discussion between the defendant and the confidential source about the best way to do it, whether it should be indoors or outdoors, whether it should be a bomb or otherwise. And at some point, again, this is pretty explicitly laid out in the complaint, there's a discussion of using explosive devices, which is why one of the charges in the complaint is use of a weapon of mass destruction.
Mr. Attorney General, this case seems to have culminated over the same time that the two hikers, there's negotiations to get the hikers released. Was any consideration or discussions with the State Department given to their plight and the evolution and timing of this case?
This case was brought as the facts warranted, as the facts dictated. We have been at this matter for a number of months, and the attorneys in the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of New York, with their colleagues in the National Security Division, worked on this matter irrespective of other things that were going on.
At what point was the Saudi government brought in?
I'm not exactly sure when they were notified, but they have been notified, and they will be reacting as well in a public fashion very soon.
Are there ambassadors in other countries that are in danger or threatened related to this whole conspiracy?
With regard to this conspiracy, but I think one has to be concerned about the chilling nature of what the Iranian government attempted to do here. And one of the things that our State Department will be doing will be getting in touch with other of our allies and nations around the world to make them aware of exactly what it is that was thwarted here today.
Last question.
Mr. Attorney General, I have to ask you about the Fast and Furious investigation, if you can indulge me for 1 minute. The report is that they're preparing subpoenas on the Hill to get information from the Justice Department, naming top officials in the Justice Department. Apparently, the people on the Hill, your critics say, they just don't believe your testimony, in essence. So what do you have to say about that? How will you comply with the subpoenas?
We have sent thousands of pages of documents up to the Hill. We'll look at the subpoenas. I'm sure we will undoubtedly comply with them. But what I want the American people to understand is that in complying with those subpoenas and dealing with that inquiry, that will not detract us from the important business that we have here to do with the Justice Department, including matters like the one that we have announced today. Thank you.
Whether you or anyone else in the department knew about the controversial tactics?